All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our first parent education night of the 21-22 school year for Earl Warren Middle School, Carmel Valley Middle School, and Pacific Trails Middle School. My name is Michelle Hoyt, and I will be the web host for tonight. And I am so excited to introduce to you Dr. Divya Kakaiya, PhD, MS in psychopharmacology. Dr. Kakaiya is a clinical director and founder of Healthy Within, and she has been working with families and teens since 1983. Her center incorporates treatment modalities that are on the cutting edge of brain neurocircuitry and gut-brain axis. As an integrative psychologist, she has been utilizing neurofeedback at her treatment center for the last 12 years and sees tremendous progress with her patients. Her patients range from age 4 to 89 years old. Having a postdoctoral degree in psychopharmacology makes her very knowledgeable about working with all aspects of brain health. She wears numerous hats within the teen world, the parenting world, ethnic communities, and the addiction world. Neurofeedback makes her an expert with gaming addictions, screen dependencies, Asperger's, autism, concussions, pain conditions, fibromyalgia, ADHD, and learning disorders. Her role as a neuroscientist makes her knowledgeable about the effects of trauma, drugs, and other neurotoxins on the brain. Mindfulness, working on regulating the brain in a non-medicated way, is Dr. K's specialty. She just published her first book on neurofeedback right as COVID-19 was beginning in 2020. She is an avid community volunteer and activist and has received numerous awards for her service to her community. Among the most notable are the Top Cool Women in San Diego by Girl Scouts and the KPBS Diversity Hero. Being a Rotarian is a huge part of her life, and she serves on numerous committees with her Rotary Club 33, which is the 4th largest Rotary Club in the world. She also serves on the board for Girl Scouts, San Diego Crime Stoppers, and San Diego Rotary. She is also active in working with anti-sex trafficking initiatives in San Diego through HT Radar. Dr. Kakaiya is a highly sought out speaker in the teen brain arena, and her talks are requested over and over again every year, which is why we are so thrilled to have her here with us tonight. So, Dr. K, take it away.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So before, as I begin, I think one of the things, and I love seeing faces on the screen, so it's very nice when I can see faces. I connect at that level of the human contact. So as you hear me speak today, one of the very important things that I just really want to underscore as I begin to speak is that what we're doing today is a gathering. And we are a gathering of parents whose children have just gone back to school fairly recently, right? So we're in a very important developmental milestone in our lives right now. And we're tackling some very complex curveballs that are coming our way right now, right? So as we come together as a gathering, one of the guidelines I want to be able to establish about this gathering is that every voice matters today. Every person coming in, your opinion and your perspectives are valued. And then also what's really important is that each of us will have our own unique ways we'll go about integrating information that we get here today and doing something different for our own gathering that we have in our home, which is our family, right? So there's the gathering of the school that our kids have just gone back to. There's the gathering of the family that we all are in here. And then there's the gathering that we're doing right now. So as Michelle, you know, when Michelle and I were kind of planning this and we talked about sending out some questions, oh my God, I love the interaction that we had from all of you with the questions that came in. And I could see from every response on that Excel sheet that everybody took time to write and become mindful and think about the questions that were being asked of all of you. So that was very heartwarming for me, and I wanted to be very heartwarming for all of you within our gathering today. And I saw some themes that came up, so I definitely am going to plan on getting to the questions, but also keep in mind that as I speak here, other questions may come up for you. So that's the reason why I said I would like it to be a very interactive conversation today, because yeah, I'm a psychologist. Yeah, I have these degrees. Yeah, I have this background behind me. But ultimately, we're all parents, and we're all parents. And bigger than that, we're all a community that is going through a once in a lifetime event that we're all experiencing, right? The last pandemic was in 1918. This is like a once in a century event, right? So we kind of want to keep that gentle perspective within ourselves so that we understand that, yeah, we could get caught up in about the screen time or this or that, but there's a bigger piece that's happening over here, which is where still in the pandemic and encountering the pandemic. So a big thing. So I just kind of wanted to establish the norm around that loved the questions, lots of more questions, and we all are experts. So I'm a specialist that can speak to quite a few issues, but really ultimately you're the expert of your family. You're the parent that knows your family the best, and you may decide to do things a certain way. Another parent may decide to do things a different way, and a third parent is going to decide to do things a different way. So there's not going to be a one size fits all of any kind of a blanket that you'll see me making for your family, because each of you is the expert of your own family. Does that make sense? Yes, right? Okay, good. So I think the big thing that I cannot, returning to a new normal, will it ever be normal? I think the way to think about this time period that we're in right now is to think of it as we are in a pivotal moment right now. This is the first time that we're making an entry, because our kids didn't go to school last year. I mean, they went in bits and pieces or however they did it, okay? But mostly they didn't really go to school, right? Not school in its traditional sense. So we are in a very, and I call it, I think I like calling the pandemic our pandemic pause, because I think what it did is, and we all know, I mean, I've had 50% of people that said they loved the lockdown. I have 50% of people who said they struggled with the lockdown, right? And then there's another, maybe 30%, 30%, right? We can do that. But there's a range of experiences. So what we want to think about when we think about what is normal and returning to a normal, I think we want to think about normal kind of like in terms of along a continuum. And really, I mean, what is the definition of normal? And I'm like, okay, I have to have a definition of normal. So what is normal? Normal is regular, natural, typical, usual. Nothing about what we've all gone through as a community is normal, right? Nothing about it was regular. Nothing was usual. Nothing. I mean, we went through an event that's an out of the ordinary event. So, and we're re-entering. So yes, we were suddenly put into the pandemic, right? Because March 13th, who doesn't remember March 13th, 2020, right? That's like etched in our brains. I remember I was in session here with a couple, and between the two of them, they have 6 kids. And suddenly their phones are just blowing off because Torrey Pines closed. All the kids were just leaving home that day. So all the high schoolers and the middle schoolers are texting mom and dad, this is the last day of school. And so we went into the pandemic very suddenly, very abruptly. And our re-entry can be at our pace. Our re-entry can be very intentional. Our re-entry can have a lot of meaning to it. Let's make sure that when we do this re-entry back again, guys, that we give it meaning and we just don't rush into the same old. Okay. I hope I can get a promise from you guys. Perhaps maybe on the chat, somebody could tell me, yes, I'm going to be intentional about the reentry, because I'd love to be able to have us all become mindful about this reentry process. And so that to me is like a very big part that I think we think about normal along a continuum. We think about reentry as something we're in charge of, that we want to be mindful about, and we need to go deeper. We need to go deeper. We need to go deeper. We need to ask ourselves, because we were kind of forced to stop. Might as well make some good use of that forced stop we had, right? And ask ourselves, what do we want to do differently about our family life? What do I want to do differently? What do my kids want to do differently? And again, we want to participate in these conversations with our children, particularly middle schoolers, younger ones, all our kids. We want to be talking about this, that, wow, we have a chance here to create a new normal for ourselves. What do we want to do with that, right? I think what's going to be normal, by the way, guys, so we better make friends with it, is uncertainty. Okay, let that drop. Uncertainty is going to be our normal. I want you all to start preparing your children for the time when school may shut down again. How will we handle that? If we operate from fear with it, then our children are going to be picking up our fear with it, right? So the new normal is going to be that uncertainty is going to be the norms. And what we're going to have to do, which is a huge part of what I want all of us to start thinking about, is that how am I going to embrace uncertainty? How am I going to embrace the unknowns? And how can I learn to live more in the moment, right? All of us who are planners, those of us that like planning our vacations, we've got this plan and we've got, Thanksgiving coming up. I mean, all that got brought to an abrupt halt last year. It is an amazingly rich, ripe, positive time for us to decide what we want to create as our new way of being in the world. I'm not even going to use the word normal. What's going to be our new way of being in the world? Okay. So I really want everybody to be thinking about that. I think what the benefits of the pandemic were is it's giving us an opportunity for us to have a reset. Okay. It's giving us a chance to reset. And we want to think about the pandemic as a filter. Think about the pandemic as a filter. What is important to us? What do we want to keep? What do we want to get rid of? Right? So think about the pandemic as a time that we've been given a reset button. Anytime, remember, like when I do my neurofeedback over here and I have to reset my buttons, I have to go and I do the restart. So we're being given an amazing gift at a restart. Don't need to overschedule our kids in 8 different activities and run around like headless chickens and get a snack in the car and go from one thing to the next thing. We do not need to replicate what we had pre-pandemic. Give yourself the vulnerability and the courage. And it takes a lot of courage for us to go deep and for us to ask ourselves questions about what is the family culture we want to create. So we all tend to have these values of how we want to live our family life and how we want to live our life. And then we have to examine what our actions are in our life. So a lot of times we talk about, we want to raise very kind, mindful children. We want to raise kiddos who are sensitive to others and who are compassionate and empathetic and everything like that. But those are your values. But if every single freaking second of the day they're being schlepped from thing to thing to thing, and they don't have time to just be, and they don't have time to get bored, they don't have time to just kind of experience their quiet, then what we're doing is we're setting up kids to just live a life that's like a robot, right? They're living a robotic life. So this is a time to really think about it. By the way, we want to ask ourselves, what is important? What is risk worthy? What are new routines we have right now that we want to maintain? A lot of our families, we all started cooking a lot more at home. Our kids were helping out with the cooking. They got more involved. And the gift was we got a chance to actually experience our kids 24/7. Yes, some of us were pulling our hair out in the whole 9 yards. I have complete compassion for all of us. Okay. We all got done. We were happy to send them off to school, right? I mean, there's no harm in being able to say that and say, oh, I finally got the house to myself or something like that, right? That's very normal. That's very understandable. But we also had the gift of really seeing their personalities, like seeing them in terms of who they really are. And we have a chance right now to establish some of those new values within our children. And I talk, people who've heard me present before, they've heard me talk like ad nauseum about the golden rule. Okay. I talk about the golden rule like no freaking other, because the golden rule, when I've gone to like a CCA, I remember a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, 2 years in a row, 3 years in a row, I did like during Red Ribbon Week, I would go and talk to in the big auditorium, 400 students at a time, like every period I would have, and I would talk to them about the teen brain and understanding your brain and how to treat it well. And I talked about pornography, and I would talk about a whole bunch of different things with the teens. And one of my questions used to be when I would talk about empathy and how to cultivate empathy, and I would ask my kiddos, what is the golden rule? In a room of 400 high schoolers, 4 hands would go up. Okay. When we have become our children's servants and we do everything for them, and they say, Mom, do this, and you do it, and they say, Dad, do this, and you do it for them, they don't get a chance to really serve others in the way in which we want to teach them to serve others, right? One of the best gifts we can teach our children is how to compromise, how to work with other people, how to have conversations. So in this new way of being you develop for yourself in your family, perhaps empathy might come at the top of your list, because we know when we're raising a generation of TikTokers that what's happening is that they are just constantly comparing themselves to everybody else. They're constantly looking out, not looking within. And so when we coach them to have silence in the house, and we also teach them, because it is our job, by the way, it's our job as parents to teach our children how to be conversationalists, how to have conversations, because they're not going to learn unless we teach it to them. But if they're wrapped up in this little guy over here, if they're wrapped up in this, then guess what? They're not going to have curiosity about grandfather just came over or my granddad came over, and I'm just going to sit down with my granddad and have a conversation with him and ask him about some of his experiences in his life or something like that, right? So the more we give, the more permission we give them to be on any screen, the more likely they are, because empathy levels among teens, college students, they've done a huge study. It was a long time ago. Empathy levels of students who had smartphones dropped by 46%. It's huge. The amount of screen time is directly correlated with whether your kid's going to be present for you and others or not. Because in the screen, they're talking within the screen. So is, in the pandemic, up having smaller circles, right? We had our pods we created, like 2 or 3 families we would do things with, that we just stayed with it. And for many of us, I know for me, for many of us, that small pod felt like comfortable, like, okay, we became more intimate with them. We got to know them better, right? We became more closer to them. So if post-pandemic, you decide that you want to keep a smaller social circle, and that's your value, nothing wrong with that, folks. Nothing wrong with that in any way whatsoever. I think the other thing that the pandemic did for many of us is it allowed us to develop like a gratitude for the simple things in life, right? I know that did that for a lot of us. So we want to not forget that lesson that was coming at the very beginning, right? And I think what we know that teens and this was so like affirming to me with all the questions, the way you all answered the questions. And like, the kids are doing fine. Re-entry back into school, they're loving it. They're enjoying it. But 49 in our country, there was a poll that was done. 49% of adults are struggling with re-entry. It's the adults who are having a harder time. So us as parents, how we tackle our anxiety really impacts how our kiddos are going to be with how they respond to the changes in their world that they're going for. So and we all know that, you know, summer came around, it seemed like there was a little bit of normalcy coming around, and then boom, we had the Delta variant that came in. So for many of us, the Delta variant felt like a whiplash, right? When you get a whiplash, you're like, oh God. So what do I do now? So I think, you know, I'm going to make a pretty powerful statement about how we will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than the fact that we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion. I yell at my parents. I yell at my moms who start their second shift after the kids go to bed at night. Okay, that's not good. That's exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, because the amount that our kiddos were on screens, there was a disconnect. I'm talking about pre-corona, because for all the questions you all had about screens right now, for me, I was getting, guess what? Exactly identical questions pre-corona. Identical questions. What ended up happening is we had to just put our hands up in the air and go, okay, we can't put any limits on this. Why do you guys think TikTok took off the way it did last March? Right? TikTok, in a matter of 2 months, grabbed millions of people around the world. They came at a very opportune time. And in the beginning, it was kind of cute, right? Because families were doing these matching dances together and you could see those dances and things like that. But pretty soon, because of the way technology works, TikTok has mastered, like literally mastered, how to make a medium the most addictive. Put TikTok on my phone 3 times, taken it off 3 times. Right now, it's the longest time I'm off TikTok, and it's been about 2 months now, and I'm not missing it. But when I had it, I'm like, oh, it's my happy time. Let me just watch a few whatever dances or whatever, right? But then before you know it, it's like 20 minutes, and I'm trying to go to sleep, but I'm on TikTok. What am I doing, right? So I am very, very much a person that's going to ask all of you, like in a really deep way. There are some lifeboats that came their way during the pandemic, right? They had to get on that lifeboat of the social media, whatever amount of social media they were doing, whatever platform they were in. Now we're returning in small baby steps to normalcy. And in small baby steps, what are the platforms I, as the parent, am going to decide to take away from my preteen and teen, because connection in real life, IRL, is more important to me than their head being down on their screen all the time. So you as parents gradually begin your process that you begin to do, where you start to detox your kids off of their social media. There's going to be no other way. Oh, I know. I saw that question that somebody sent on that on the Excel sheet, where they said China has instituted a mandatory law. We don't follow. We don't do that kind of stuff. Okay. What they've done is, apparently there's a law now in China where they can only be on social media for an hour or half an hour or something like that, that somebody put that on that Excel sheet. Okay. I wonder, for a country that is as digitized as it is, that has the numbers of addictions on social media as they do, why they would have come up with such a strong law. They know that they're losing the brains to their social media, right? They know that their brains are being lost to their social media. So what's going on for them is they are really struggling, as are we, And so what we want to do is our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalize greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage. I mean, look at what has been happening in our country in the last few years. Hoarding, hate, and lack. Like, I have one of these, whatever the fancy name purses are. Like a person will have like one purse. That one purse is not going to be enough for them. They'll need the second one. Then you need the third one. So it's like stuff. You know, we were so attached to stuff in so many ways. What do we want to decide we want to attach to now post-corona, right? This is the moment where we're being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature. So how are we going to fix that new garment? So that's like a big part of what I really wanted to kind of begin with, and really talking about empowering each and every one of you to say, what do I want to do that's going to be different? And how do we want our family life to be that valued life that we live? I think some of the skills that we need to cultivate with our children in terms of adjusting to this new norm that we have going on is teaching them to plan on uncertainty, okay? We all should be planning for uncertainty. There's no ifs, ands, and buts in my mind about it, right? No ifs, ands, and buts. Let's plan for uncertainty, because what is the name of the new variant that's come out? There's another one like after Delta that's come out already, that's been around since April. Right? There was one, I don't remember the name of it, but they're going to be variants, because a virus, the way a virus lives on the way it does is it mutates. So it's going to keep mutating, but we're going to remain with the science. We're going to remain connected to what science tells us we need to do to protect ourselves, right? But we do need to plan on uncertainty. And if we plan on uncertainty, then we can communicate that language with our children, where we can say, let's all plan on uncertainty, because, you know, things are going to be uncertain. We might book a vacation for December, but chances are that the variant may not have settled down, and we may have to cancel that vacation. So instead, what could be our plan B be, and what could a plan C be? Like, families took road trips, guys. People took road trips last summer. Why do we have to give up on road trips? We can still keep taking road trips, because and then you have to take road trips without any technology in anybody's hands. Like, the kids cannot have technology in their hands, because otherwise then they don't talk. Road trips were very solidifying for families, because there was connection that would happen. Kids would get bored. You would sing songs that you sang in your Boy Scout camp when you were a teenager. You taught your kids some of the songs. Kids would ask questions about, Dad, what was it like when you grew up? And da 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 da. Those are conversations we want to be having. When we live this jet-setting, busy life, we're losing all the connections. We want to plan for disruptions. How do we plan for disruptions? You just say, hey guys, guess what? We're going to be having disruptions. I guarantee you. And if you say to the kids, I guarantee you, chances are school might shut down. It's not the end of the world, guys, when school shuts down. This is what you're telling your kids, okay? School may shut down, because you're telling yourself this as well, that school may shut down. And we've known how to deal with it when school shuts down. So what will our plan B be? One thing we'll all do is we won't let their sleep get disrupted the way we did in those first 2 months of the pandemic, right? Because all the parents were letting their kids stay up until 4 a.m. in the morning gaming. All the boys were like, oh, this is freedom, right? Because we thought it was only going to be 2 months. But what we did is we disrupted their entire circadian rhythm. So when the disruption occurs this time, make sure you as the parent remain connected to that. So see how they're all going to bed early now. They're all excited about going to school. They're getting more regulated. They're getting their homework done. They're like, there's joy in your kids right now, and they're going to bed earlier. Make sure they continue to go to bed earlier. And if there is a disruption, your plan as a parent is, I'm not going to do what we did last April. We will make sure we stick to our school rhythms exactly. All our little baby steps that we're taking right now to get them back into that routine in the evening, we do the same thing. We stick with the same routine. Classroom will just be, and if you felt like your kid was falling asleep in their room in school, you make sure they're all downstairs and they all have the headphones and everybody's working together in a pod together, right? So those are some things. I think also what's really nice that's helpful for our kiddos is that when we're adjusting, that we try to make positive predictions about the future. We say, "Oh, you know what, if school shuts down again, everything shuts down again, and we're home, guess what? You get to come downstairs for lunch. You help me prepare lunch. You have a little nice break. We get to talk, blah, blah, blah." So make some positive predictions about the future as things change. And give yourself permission and give your children permission to fill their mind with the possibility of excitement, engagement, intention, like, intentionality with that, right? Um, and then I think the other positive piece of it is we're living through a pandemic. We're not done with it, right? We're not done with it. We're living through a pandemic and a disaster. And what am I grateful to be alive for? Patients who worked with me know that one of the things that we did very regularly with our kids is they did a gratitude journal every night. This was, that's just a habit in our intention of our family, how we like to focus on gratitude. So every night my kids would write down 3 things they're grateful for. And if they repeat the same stuff 8 nights in a row, I'm gonna pick my battle. The fact that they write down 3 things is good enough. Then they get bored with what they write down. Then they start thinking about other things they want to write down, right? So what am I glad to be alive for? And then we can return in baby steps. And we might take 2 steps forward, 1 back, 3 steps forward, 2 back. So little itty bitty baby steps. We don't have to jump into opening the way we were jumped into closing. Kind of keep that in mind as a way to stabilize your family. It's really interesting. There were 3 really good studies that were done on the benefits of uncertainty. Okay, benefits of uncertainty. They put some signs out. This was like a group of, I think it was 400 subjects in this study. They had a sign saying, the world is chaotic, stop and smell the roses. Then they had another sign that said, the world is predictable, stop and smell the roses. So they would trade out the signs. When they would put down, the world is chaotic, stop and smell the roses, more people would stop and smell the roses when they experience the chaos in the world. So the chaos we're experiencing in present right now is a sweet, delicious opportunity for us to decide what is meaningful about today for me, just for today. What is meaningful? What were your ups and beautiful dining table conversation is, what were some of your highs and lows of today? You want to hear the highs and you want to hear the lows. And again, I'll go back when I talk about anxiety, I'll talk a little bit about that. So the other study was, what did they do? The second study was one where they had people watch videos. Some videos were, it was a video about how unpredictable and random life is and things like that. And this study had 400 people. Unpredictable and random our lives are, accompanied by chaotic graphs and rolling dice and things like that. The other video was all about steady, predictable, consistency, blah, blah, blah. And then what they found is that the people who watched the videos that were more chaotic ended up making an intention to be more savoring of their life. Okay, so think about, how do you savor? What am I doing that makes me feel the sweetness of my life today? What is the savoring I can do, right? And then the third study was interesting. This was a group of 6,000 people in this study. They would ping them constantly in the day, a dozen times a day, asking how unpredictable and the world felt in the moment. There was 2 questions. How unpredictable is your world feeling in the moment? And are they savoring the present? And what they found with that study is that when the world felt messy, people were more likely to be savoring the moment. So messy is not bad. Unpredictable is not bad, folks. We live in a society where, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, the industry of happiness, right? We know anybody who writes a book on happiness, how to become happy, that book becomes a bestseller. Because we as a culture chase happiness. I don't think there's any such thing as happiness. The more we chase it, the more elusive it becomes. There's contentment. There's living in the present. There's savoring the present. But happiness is this elusive thing that is very difficult for most people to achieve. But if you have contentment, that's good enough, right? So be thinking about that. And I think the very other big thing that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk a little bit. So far, any questions that are coming up? Anybody wants to put any questions in any of the chat at all? Because I've been like talking more than I thought I was going to talk. Anyone wants to come on and be bold and courageous and come on the microphone? I'm always very comfortable with pauses because a pause means we're thinking. I'm going to get to the questions, I promise. Anyone has a question? I don't see. Do you see anything in the chat, Michelle? I don't. We're kind of absorbed. I see some faces. I'm looking at a few faces. Yeah, this is kind of heavy. This is sort of big for us to have a rethink about. Somebody with a question. Good.
Hi, Miss Kakaiya. This is Adam.
No, you don't say.
Oh, never mind. Not my name. Not my name. I was wondering how much screen time you'd recommend each day for high schoolers or middle schoolers, also knowing that we're going to be on our Chromebooks and stuff during class time.
Yeah, Adam, I'm going to talk about that for sure, because that was the question that showed up the most. Okay, so I just got a question that came in the chat box that what's the best age at which to give a mobile phone to a kid? You guys are gonna hate my answer. Now, remember, I've been doing talks with teen parents probably maybe 15 years now, right? I was doing these kinds of presentations before iPhones came into the picture. So I've seen the cultural distress that has come about in families as a result of iPhones in the family. At one point I used to say after 8th grade before they start high school, right? At one point I used to say that. When I was saying that is when I was saying that, during that time, parents were already starting to get their kids cell phones when they were in 2nd grade and 3rd grade. And the reason was, they need to reach out to us. We need to reach out to them, whatever the reasons were, right? My current recommendation of when is the best time to get, which is all of you are going to say, this is stupid. This is unrealistic. This can't be done. And I have so many, because I talk about this a lot within my Girl Scout community. I have so many Girl Scout parents who have chosen to listen to this particular piece of advice. And the difference I see with those girls compared to the ones who got phones earlier on is like night and day. My current recommendation is, there's going to be a mic drop, 2nd semester, senior year of high school. And I say that because by that time they have senioritis, they're getting bored. And I also say that because I want them to have about 1.5 years after they've started driving to develop that cognitive map. Do you remember how we all used to get to places? We would look up the map, we would get the directions, you would write it down before we could print it out on MapQuest or whatever. You would write it down, you knew where to go. And we developed a cognitive map of, oh, when I make a left on Oberlin, this is what happens. There's a building over there, there's a tree there. Our children's brains are suffering as a result of them just leaning on the map right away. I'll have patients, teenagers who are coming for their first appointment. They're literally on my street here on Oberlin, and they're lost. They're on my street, and they'll text me, and they're like, Dr. Kakaiya, I'm lost. So that's how little practical skills they develop because of us giving them a tool that's a little computer they walk around with, where they don't have to do any critical thinking on their own about their 3D world. So that's what I say now. I have a ton. So what I say, when kiddos have phones, okay, we're in the phone conversation. Let's just go for it. When 98% of their friends will have phones and you're the 2% parents who choose to not give them phones, you're teaching your child to not have to be somebody who thinks outside the box, who doesn't have to fit in with the norm of what everybody else is doing. By the nature of them not having the phone, you're saying to them, you can be an outlier. By the way, it's a good idea to read the book Outlier. That's a very good book. You're coaching your child to say it's okay to be different, because the people who tend to be actually very creative and who do really well in life and who are able to really feel a sense of meaning in their world are the ones who actually think outside the box. So from a very young age, if you don't give them the phone and it doesn't match up, we grew up, we decided that we didn't want to have television in our home. So we did not have cable in our home forever and ever. I mean, I got cable after I think my son went off to college or something like that. But we grew up in a house without television coming in. We would watch Netflix on a Friday night, and that was like our family thing that we would do, right, together as a family. And what would happen is my daughter's friends would be like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys don't have TV in your home. Gosh, what do you do with your free time? She's a reader, right? So they read more when we don't have, because what I have noticed just in the last 10 years, every kid that's a reader, like in 5th grade, 6th grade, they're amazing reader. Parents decide in 7th or 8th grade to get them a phone. That child stops reading. You all know. I'm preaching to the choir, okay? You all know that the minute your kids started getting a phone, they stopped reading books. Books journey us into so many different lands. Books take us to other countries. Books expand our empathy. One of the best ways we expand empathy is by reading fiction books. That's a big, successful way to increase the empathy in your child. I will tell parents who ask me that question about what if all their friends have it, but my child doesn't have it? Well, if all their friends are going to be doing Coke right now, do you want your child to be doing Coke as well? Because I see the smartphone from a neuroscience perspective, the kind of dopamine hits we get with the smartphone are exactly identical to what we get with cocaine. Parallel. That's why they're so addicted. I had a kid that just left from her neurofeedback session, and she's a 7th grader, and the dad just got her a phone like in December. The struggle she had to release the phone to him when she was going to be neurofeedback. And then as soon as we were done, the first thing her mind wanted to do is get the phone from her dad. And she just started doing this, zero connection, zero talking, just jumped right into her phone. So I think that we have to teach our children to get comfortable with FOMO. You teach them. You say, you're going to have FOMO. Not the end of the world. Why should FOMO be the end of the world? They will have fear of missing out. They will miss out. They will know a lot of things that will be happening. They may not have, but the people who will be in their inner tight circle are going to be the people who genuinely know your child, care about them, and are inviting them to things. And what they'll do is they'll invite them because they'll say, oh, I know you don't have a phone, but I emailed you, or I called your parents on their phone. I called on your landline, if any of you have a landline. But I think that, I think when our kids hate us a little bit for some of the things that we do, that's the right stuff for them. It's okay. It's not the end of the world if your children hate you. Like I'm not raising them in order for me to have a popularity contest with them liking me, right? Children are going to dislike things that rules and boundaries we establish with them. We should expect them to push back against that and not like it. But that doesn't mean we change that rule just because they don't like it. It's tough. This phone issue is huge, and our rates it was so funny at my Rotary Club, we had the head psychiatrist of Radies that came and spoke like 2 years ago. It couldn't have, yeah, it was 2019, summer of 2019. And he was talking about the rapid escalating anxiety, depression, and suicidality we have among teens, right? Because we all see the statistics about that. And as he's doing the presentation, because I talk about this all the time in all my presentations, and he showed this chart and he had the years there on the chart. And he's like, and what I want you all to see on my chart is this is when the iPhone came out, and this is when it started going in a spiral like that. So here's the head of Radies, this chief psychiatrist, who's connecting the dots on the same things that all of us in the field of psychology, we know the damage that these smartphones do to our children. They don't teach them to become critical thinkers. They don't teach them to interact with the real life world. So it's really okay for us in terms of as we come back and we try to develop a new norm, that we say, gosh, we needed to let you be on your Chromebooks, and we needed to let you do a whole bunch of things that we normally would not have. But what we've decided is we're slowly going to be taking, like, I've known parents who just like, they're like, oh, we're ready to do this. And they just cut the cord. Expect your kids to be mad at you for at least a minimum of 3 months. After that, the child that'll show up in front of you is going to be like, you'll be like, whoa, I had forgotten how sweet my son was. Because when they're doing that gaming, and especially when they're doing first-person shooter games and all of that, we've done a lot of research, a lot of studies that have shown that when they take cortisol levels and everything of the kids that are gaming, that the body is experiencing the war zone exactly as if it was in the war zone. So all the indicators on the body are exactly what your child, so every time they're playing those games, you're sending them back out into the war zone. No wonder you try to get them off and they look at you, and you guys have seen the eyes they have when they look at you when they get off the screen. It's like they're ready to rip you apart because they've got their cortisol levels have jumped up so much and they're ready to be aggressive. And there is a correlation. The reason why we don't see those studies as much is because the gaming industry, kind of like the big pharma industry, the reason why you won't see so much about neurofeedback is because medications. Big pharma has a lot of money. So other alternative approaches. So in the same way, the reason why you won't see a lot of the studies about gaming, like hitting the news all the time or anything, is because they can suppress that because they have so much money marketing the games. The games make a ton of money. So I thought what I would do now is talk a little bit about anxiety, because I could see from the questions we had. Does anybody have any other questions around the phone thing? We'll circle back again to the phone for sure. And Adam, I hope I answered your question.
I had a follow-up question about that. Not necessarily smartphone, but what about just like a regular flip phone?
I love flip phones. And you know what happens with the flip phone? The kid doesn't like it. They barely use it. They only use it when they need to call you, or they use it if they want to whine and have you come pick them up or something like that.
Yeah, so you wouldn't suggest waiting till second semester senior year for a regular phone, right?
No, especially when they start driving. When they start driving is when you get them a flip phone. Then second semester senior year, the reason why you get them an actual phone is because they're bored. School, like they put in their applications, they're waiting to hear, they all get into a lot of trouble. Then if you buy them a shiny new little toy, they get so excited about it that they get like, it becomes like a celebration. And if more families started, just said, we're going to have a way where we don't, it's again, coming back to the gathering, right? We're a gathering. As a gathering, our children, we know our children matter to us. We don't like the degree to which they're rude to us, how insensitive they are, how unempathetic they are, how mean they become when we take some of those things away from them. And they're supposed to be mean because you're taking their drug away from them. Anybody takes anybody's drug away, they're going to be mean to you. So you can be the parent and you can say, this is how we're going to do things differently in our family. So in this, so each of you, I'm not going to say do this, do that, do this. each of you, based on the degree to which you feel that screens disrupt the valued life you want to live in your family, then you make the decision about what you're going to do about those screens. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So what I thought I would talk a little bit about is anxiety, because a lot of people had questions about anxiety, right? The big thing that I want us to, with all the other things I'm making you all think about, I want you to be thinking about how we have a cultural myth that exists for us. It's a myth that anxiety is something that's abnormal. It's something to be afraid of. It's something we need to manage. Okay? Anxiety is we need to be afraid of anxiety. So, all of us are like, my kid's anxious. She's having a hard time. I've had a parent who's emailed me today because she wants to bring her daughter in for neurofeedback because she's very anxious about going back to school. And she's having panic attacks. So there's anxiety, there's stress and anxiety, you've got panic attacks, you have separation anxiety. Some kids have social anxiety. Social anxiety will be a little bit on the rise right now because they've not interacted with any of these kids for a year and a half, over a year and a half. So, we're middle schoolers, we're high schoolers, we care about what others think about us, we care about how they perceive us. So we're going to be worrying about our outfit, we're going to be worrying about how we make sentences, and did I sound dorky, did I sound stupid, why did I say that? So a little bit of that social anxiety will be a little bit on the rise right now, but I don't want you guys to jump on a bandwagon with it and run to fix it. And when they talk about their anxiety, you just go, honey, it is to be expected. We're in what triggers anxiety are unpredictable events, right? What makes us anxious? Typically when unknowns come around us, unpredictable events come around us, sudden curveballs come our way, right? That's what tends to make most of us anxious. And anxiety is felt very much in the body. Usually anxiety is very much in the body. So you can say, gosh, how does that feel for you? And, ask them questions. They can talk about it. A lot of times when a child can talk about the anxiety they're feeling, where they're feeling it in their body, how it makes them feel. Anxiety is kind of like a wave. When a person can talk about it and you don't pathologize it and you don't say you have to fix it, anxiety has a tendency of subsiding. But if we can create that receptacle for our child, right? So for me, anxiety is a very healthy, normal, appropriate reaction to what we are still going through. Do not pathologize anxiety. Do not make it like a bad thing. I really want you guys to embrace anxiety. I want you to welcome it, just like how I said that about unpredictability. Again, anxiety is a piece that we really want to welcome, right? And for me, when I think about emotions and feelings and thoughts and behaviors, that emotions are communication. Our children are communicating something to us through their feelings. When we as parents really pause and we listen to their feelings, what ends up happening is they feel heard, they feel listened to, they feel validated, and whatever that distress is that they're feeling, they feel soothed. Guess what, guys? Anxiety settles down. Anxiety is a transitory emotion that when you meet it with receptivity and you meet it with curiosity and you meet it with an open heart and you meet it with a listening ear, what's going to happen is that anxiety is going to settle down, right? The more we react to our teenagers' behaviors, the more then we both start to spiral up together, right? So you don't want to react. You don't want to be reacting to their behaviors. You just really, and it takes time. It takes time for us to learn these new behaviors. And I think it's also very important for us to have kind of like some space, because we're all still in these unknown territories, right? And we see our children struggle. They come home and some kids looked at them in a weird way, or some kid made bizarre comment, and then we might have a child who just is not very much like confident about herself, therefore she might be imitating people a lot, or there's a lot of things that our middle schoolers and high schoolers are doing in order to like become a part of the world and become a part of the community they belong to and everything. And chances are they're going to have some positive feelings and they're going to have some negative feelings. So as parents, we want to be able to give them permission to have both negative and positive feelings coexist at the same time, right? So again, what the interesting piece to know about anxious kids is that kids and people who have anxiety tend to overschedule themselves. Okay, they like to put a lot of things. And when we also overschedule our kids, we are actually triggering anxiety for them. So we want to give them time to just be alone, just chill, not have anything that they have to do, because then in that quiet time, they have some time to sort of digest feelings that have been going on in the day. So what happens with kiddos who tend to be anxiety prone, because they like to overschedule themselves, and because we sometimes parents may say to ourselves, oh, she just does better when she has a lot of things that she's got going. So basically what you're doing is you're keeping your kids super busy because they're anxious, and you've seen how if she's left with less stuff to do, she seems to be uneasy in her skin and uneasy in her body and everything. So you as a parent, you're trying to be well-intentioned with what you're doing with her, but in some ways you're doing her a disservice or him a disservice, because then you're not asking them to be able to like just sit with their anxiety, face it. It's like a wave. It comes and it goes. And you're also not taking the time to teach your child gentle meditation techniques, because anxiety, number one thing by far that settles anxiety down is about 5 to 7 minutes of meditation. Literally, guys, 5 to 7 minutes of meditation. And there are some really cute meditation apps for kids and teens. And, when they're feeling anxious, you say, God, honey, it's understandable. I mean, you've had a lot going on. There was a lot of moving parts in school today, and I can understand that you would be anxious. I think if I had all that went on for you today, I think I would be anxious too. But we're here, and I'm really wanting you to be able to talk about it, and I'm listening, and just kind of, be there for them. Don't fix it, but just be there for them, which is so freaking hard for us parents to do, right? Because we want to fix it, right? And the reason why bedtime becomes a very challenging time for kiddos with anxiety is that you've kept them so scheduled and they've kept themselves so busy that when their head hits the pillow, the first time in the day, they might have quiet. So of course the mind starts spinning, the mind starts racing. So you really want to give them space to have quiet time at times other than at bedtime. And I usually like to do like consistent bedtime routines for kids who get anxious in the evening, like create some consistency in the bedtime routine. And also make sure you teach them to do a little bit of meditation before they go to bed, so that you're coaching them as to this is what you can do with your mind, because your mind wants to run at 90 miles an hour the minute your head hits the pillow. And the same goes for us as adults. I mean, how many of us will have that brain, like, right, going at 90 miles an hour? So I think that during post pandemic, I think some of the things that the challenges that'll show up too with our kids, I mean, we should anticipate that they may have periods of sadness, grief. I mean, the pandemic was a rapid entry into grief, right? Everything that could have happened, right? We got a crash course on grief because we lost everything all at one go. The pandemic was a crash course on grief. So if you have a child that seems like, and you see your child when they're feeling depression or something, there's like there won't be like a light in their eyes and that twinkle that they have. You may not see that. Chances are, if you're seeing some subtle signs of sadness or depression, they may be grieving. And when we give grief some space to be, and when they can talk about what they're missing the most, what they're losing the most, what'll probably happen for them is their mood will start to lift, and that sadness will start to lift. You don't need to go plop them in a shrink's office like myself. If you as a parent, you show up for them and you give them space to talk about their grief, their sadness will lift. So kind of keep that in mind. I think because what I found is that untalked about grief is what tends to lead to anxiety. Untalked about grief is what tends to lead to depression. So when we've not talked about grief, like I have a patient I'm seeing right now, his son is going to go off to college and he's going to leave in like 2 weeks. And I was asking him, I'm like, Ryan, have you been like telling him practically every single day how much you're going to miss him when he's gone? He's like, no, Dr. K, I haven't been doing that. I said, well, I want you to tell him, because what that does, so what his son is doing is his son is procrastinating on everything because he doesn't want to leave home and take the step of going all the way up to Oregon. So as soon as his dad has begun to talk with him some more about how life is going to change when he leaves, guess what? The energy is moving in the family already right now, because they're talking about how different our family is going to be when you leave. And, you know, gosh, it's going to be, you know, and I'm going to miss this about you. I'm going to miss that about you. So suddenly now he's pulled out his bag and he's packing some clothes and he started doing some shopping, because the impending loss that is in the picture right now began to be talked about. And then there was movement that started to happen, right? So we really want to be able to do this. I think we want to be able to really promote resilience. We all are way stronger than we tend to give ourselves credit for. Our kids are stronger than we tend to give them credit for. Adversity really grows our children. And for this generation of parents, that's hard for you guys. It's hard for you guys to let your kids have any kind of adversity, because you're like my helicopter parents that are just like hovering everywhere. And then the pandemic forced you to become even more helicoptery. I mean, you know, there was no choice with that, right? So any of you that had tendencies of being like a very parent was given full freedom to be that parent, and you're going to have to do a lot of work to back off, because your child will never develop independence unless you back off and you allow them to experience some adversity in their life. Adversity is underneath the seat of resilience. Resilience on the, bouncing back can only occur when we have failures. All my staff that comes to work for me here, we know that we are a culture that really honors failure. Our culture does not like to talk about failure. We want to embrace failure. We want to honor failure. We want to be able to bring those things in. And for me, I think Tara Brach, one of my meditation masters, said it the best. She says, success is the sum of our most beautiful failures. Okay? Success is the sum of our most beautiful failures. And there's no way in life I would be the parent I am today if I hadn't screwed up in some royal ways along the way as I was raising my children. My son's 23 and my daughter's gonna turn 30 soon, right? There's no way I could have done any. I had all the parenting knowledge and everything, but oh my God, some of the errors that I made in parenting, but it's those errors that made me become real, made me become humble, taught me how to do things differently, because every time I make a mistake, for me, a mistake is an opportunity for growth. So when we go forward into the fall here, errors are going to be the way our children will learn how to get comfortable and how to toggle a social emotional relationship with somebody, making mistakes. But I want you guys to convey an emotion of, honey, you've got this. Sweetheart, you've got this. You've got this. I promise you. I know it feels awkward. I understand they looked at you in a weird way. I don't understand why they formed a new group and left you behind. That's not fair. Do you think that's fair? That's absolutely not fair. But you know, sweetheart, I believe in you and you've got this. I know because you're so resilient that you'll figure out a way to navigate this uncomfortable place that you're in. Rather than you give them the answer, you give them validation that they're very capable of coming up with some solutions. And that capacity, by the way, only increases if they don't have a smartphone around them. FYI, just saying. What other questions are coming up as I did this piece over here? I'm going to give people some time to think. I'm really convinced. I am so convinced that we need to be able to feel bold and feel courageous about looking at the way in which we miss our kiddos because they're on that phone or they're gaming or they're in that group on that FaceTime group thing that they're doing in the evening with a group of friends, right? They've got it now, they're getting time with their friends. They're getting enough time with their friends. If you yank those freaking phones away from them, not the end of the world. You say you guys got enough time. This is now we're feeling sacred about our family time now because we got spoiled because we had you around us all day long, and now we only have you for these few hours, and we're not wanting to share you with the whole world out there because you go to that world for 6 or 7 hours a day, but we want you to ourselves now. You matter to us, and we want you to ourselves. We don't want you on the game but all my friends, every friend I've made, because if your kid who's gaming only has gaming friends and that's the only community he has created, the comfort of that is not going to give him permission to get uncomfortable on his high school campus or his middle school campus and make some new in real life friends. That's why this is like a very pregnant time in some ways, where what do we give birth to here? What do we want to give birth to at this point, right? And I think the only way in which they will develop, because there's a very, I had so many of you speak to this in the questions, is we definitely have a lag in their social emotional development, right? Because they weren't around their peers. This is the age at which they grow so much with being around their peers. They did not have that. So to make up for that time, if we keep giving them the online community on demand, then they're not going to feel that discomfort or the loneliness or the emptiness that they should feel in order to propel themselves in the direction of what they want to have in their life. So that, I think that's going to be the only way. The only suggestion I'm going to make is speak with your partners. Don't have major conversations with the kids right now. First of all, mom and dad, or the parents in the family, mom and mom, dad and dad, the parents in the family have to come together and say, what do we want to do? And how do we want to be intentional about this? Because they had a year and a half. You know that they're going to have smartphones for the rest of their lives, right? They had a year and a half of unfettered access to screens. If we have them here with us for the next 4 or 5 years, because if you have an 8th grader, that's 5 years. If you have a 7th grader, that's 6 years. And these 5 to 6 years, I kid you not, guys, they pass by so freaking fast. They really pass by really fast. So what you want to do is you and your partner come together, come up with a discussion about what is it that, oops, I've got some messages coming in. What we want to do is we want to make sure we come up with some ground rules and we stick to them. Because part of what we had to do at the outset of the pandemic is we were not able to create really any decent ground rules because we all went into a state of shock and then we just kind of let free fall happen, right? So we let free fall happen, but free fall doesn't have to be free fall anymore now. School has resumed. You're the parents. You guys can make the decision about how you want to navigate this next chapter of the next 6 years of your kid's life or the next 7 years while they're still under your umbrella. And even though the train has left the station, because so many of my parents were like, but we already got them the phone. I go, yeah, but isn't the phone under your name? And do you not pay the bill for that phone? And wouldn't your bill be cheaper if you just, actually, by the way, guys, these freaking flip phones are more expensive than the smartphones. That's what they're doing. They're trying to make the data for the flip phone and everything so inconvenient for us to get so that we purchase the most shiny object. Okay, keep that in mind. So those of you that decide to go switch out, first go to your phone stores and, fight it out or figure out what you're going to do before you take your kid along with you, because then they'll be like, see, I told you, let's just stick with my phone. Yeah, because they'll be like, okay, look at what a hassle it is or whatever. And you go do the hassle yourself if you decide to do that. But I think, and the withdrawal from screens is a very nasty withdrawal. But it's, be patient. It lasts about 3 to 6 months. And then you have a completely different child on the other end of it. So just kind of keep that in mind. Yeah. They do have, they have comfort with it. They need to establish, we need to establish new routines. And I think that most importantly, as you come up with these guidelines around what you're going to do around screens in your family, you really want to be having what I call a value-based decision about this. What is kindness a value for our family? Is empathy a value for our family? Is doing for others a value for our family? What are the values in our family? What are the areas that are important for us? So, how is family important? How much importance do we want to give to social life? How much importance do we want to give to work? How much importance are we giving to education and training? What about recreation and fun for our family? What are the values we have around that? What about community life? What about our spirituality? What are the values of our family? And then self-care. What are the values in terms of hiking as a family together? Do we have one day in our family where it's completely tech-free? Like all my families that have decided either like a Saturday or a Sunday is a day when nobody, includes, especially dads. Dads, I'm talking to you guys right now. If everybody goes tech-free for one whole day, the dynamic in the family changes, because the teenagers, even the college students that are home, the teenagers are like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do anything on my computer today. I'm not going to be able to do anything with my phone. Everybody goes tech-free. That the family comes together. And certainly we can go off the grid one day of the week, guys. We can go off the grid. And I think we're going to be with this pandemic, shades of the pandemic. My sense is probably for another 2 or 3 years. So let's settle in for the long run. I think it's going to take some time until all of us feel safe, all of us feel comfortable. I am grieving not having been able to go see a single concert at the Shell. Like my mouth was watering as the Shell was getting built, because that's like my thing. I'm grieving that, but tons of my friends have gone. They're all, especially all my Rotarians, they're all gone. They're going in groups. It's all outdoors. They're all free fly. But I work with children 13 and younger. I go home. I stop at Trader Joe's. I come back to work. I do that. That I still live that because I have little ones around me that I need to protect. So I'm going to be extra careful. The Shell just got built. Guess what? It's probably going to be around for the next 80 years. It'll be around after I die. I can go to the Shell next year. And if I don't get to go in 2022, I'm going to choose to go in 2023. If I don't get to go in 2023, I'll go the year after that, right? So those are the things we really kind of want to think about that and have. And when we talk with our children, having that kind of a perspective. I like this piece, because when it comes to anxiety, we all tend to feel like everything that our children talk about. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm like, oh, maybe some young person decided to join us in here. That was kind of nice, yeah. And I think the big thing that we want to be thinking about in terms of that emotional engagement with our children is to talk about like all feelings being acceptable feelings. It's very important to, because again, with that categorization we do about feelings, we tend to say, oh, if they're happy, then that's good. But if they're sad, then that's bad. We don't want to categorize feelings as good or bad. All feelings are acceptable. So then we get into this place where we observe the feelings, we interact with the feelings, but we don't feel a need to fix the feelings, right? And our feelings and thoughts are just thoughts. Like thoughts, we are not our thoughts. When we have thoughts, it's because the brain is functioning, it's giving us our thoughts, right? So think about thoughts as just thoughts and feelings as important communication vehicles that are telling us about where we are and where our children are with things. And our emotions are not our enemies. So we don't want to make our feelings our enemies in any way whatsoever. And also our emotions don't define us. Our values define us. So thoughts are thoughts, feelings are feelings. Our emotions don't define us. Our heart, our liver doesn't define us. Our lungs don't define us. So you want to be thinking about what I have found really with anxiety, because that's a lot of you had questions about anxiety. What I found that's significant with anxiety is anxiety kind of has a hard time living next to a kid who's well fed, a kid who has laughter, a kid who gets lots of sleep, and a kid who has a lot of flexibility in his way of being in the world, right? So anxiety cannot coexist with a rested child. Anxiety doesn't coexist with a loved child. Anxiety doesn't coexist with a child who's feeling listened to and validated. Got to listen to our children. And I like to do this. I think it's I think from the time our kids are like maybe 4th grade, 5th grade, we can do these things where we can function with them in a collaborative way. You say, well, and especially teenagers, as they become like teenagers, you really want to have conversations with them where they're conversations of curiosity. That's what I like to do is, gosh, you know, it seems as if like when you come back from your practice and then you might have like gotten, it seems as if when you get, you know, you FaceTime with a friend or something like that, and then you take your shower, my sense is it seems like maybe the homework gets left to the very end, and then you seem like you get stressed. Like, is that your experience of how your evening seems to go? And what is your sense of how you think you could make your evening go? So being able to ask questions where you're noticing certain behaviors and certain patterns of self-sabotage that your teenager might have, and you're just kind of curious about it. You're not telling them what to do. Oh my God, I can't believe it. The minute you come home, you get on your phone, you're on your freaking phone the whole time. Then you start your homework at 8:30 at night. You know, that's the best way to shut down a teenager. That's not the way to communicate with your teenager. You go, well, you know, I'm like thinking, it seems like this is what seems to happen. What are your thoughts about it? And then don't wait for an answer. I'm a big one for like planting the seed in the mind of your teenager and say, and we actually kind of don't need to talk about it right now. I was just thinking about it, because what you've done then is you've planted a seed in their mind, and you may come back and talk about it, or you may not ever come back and talk about it. And another thing that really, I think that really helps, we love this with, I love this with my son when he was growing up, especially when he was in high school. One of our most favorite things we cultivated, and I think it's God's blessing, however this came to us, is he loved going on walks with me. And I realized, and he'd be like, okay, Mom, what time are you coming home? What time are we going for a walk? I mean, this would be a daily question. And what I realized is what he liked about our walks, because he's a talker, right? What he liked about our walks is that he would talk the entire time, and I just listened. I would never give him advice. I would never try to tell him what to do. And he looked forward to the walks, because that was when he would download everything that was going on for him in the day. And we were moving, and we were not looking at each other, but we were walking and talking. So if any of you can begin I mean, I love doing that with my daughter too, but girls are more like directly communicative, but boys are different. And I always tell my parents, when you start taking your son for a walk, you're not allowed to take a pet along with you, because then you have a third person in the group there. Just the two of you go for a walk together, not take the dog for a walk or anything like that. And then you just remain quiet and you say, oh, how was your day? And you guys might have an entire 2 months of walking where he doesn't really talk much, or she doesn't really talk much, but they've developed this nice predictable routine. Because remember, in those earlier days, we got to know our neighbors better. We were walking our neighborhoods. We were like doing so much more of that connection, and we can input some of that back into our current time, right? We don't have to stick to the old structures, create new ones. we had some parents that asked questions about quizzes and organizing homework and exams and what do you do with your child if they start to get very stressed about their quizzes. I think that right now, as a psychologist, remember, I'm not an educator speaking right now, I'm talking as a psychologist. I think we need to give our children a lot of breathing room and not make academics. We know they've had academic loss. A more, not more, it's equally important, a more important loss, I think, that makes a person a human being is the emotional part, right? And that emotional part is where we want to put a lot of our energy into. We want to put energy into the emotional growth that they need to cultivate back again with their peers, the emotional growth there. So they'll be, if they're wanting to do more like safe sanction, depending on whether how many of the kids are vaccinated or if their families are vaccinated or not. And, you know, we still have to ask those risk questions. And if they're wanting to do more things with some new friends that they've met in school and things like that, you know, start hosting some backyard parties, invite people over, do small things like those, because that emotional growth right now, I think these first 6 to 9 months, let's focus a little bit more on that emotional growth. The academic stuff, when the kids feel heard, they feel a sense of belongingness, they feel valued, they start working their rear ends off for their teachers. They really do. They really do. Because if they feel like they matter, they're going to start jumping on the academic bandwagon. So give your kids the message that, listen, guys, I'm not saying that I want you to be bringing home Fs. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying right now is we've got a big thing going on. You're finally meeting your friends again in school. Honey, I want you to enjoy that for right now. If we falter a little bit with our grades right now, we're not going to make that the end of the world for us right now. That's not going to be, and I don't want you to make that, because I had a patient she's like, she goes to this school and she's like, I've never had, she took 2 weeks, she's a senior, took 2 weeks off from school because she had COVID. Okay, she had COVID, so she couldn't go to school. And she's behind. Understandably, she's behind because she took 2 weeks off and she didn't do any work during that time. And she's never had like a 5% in math or something like that. And she's got a 5% right now. So she's the one who's writing herself more than her teachers are. Her teachers are giving her a ton of flexibility. The teachers are completely okay with what she's turning in. And I said, honey, because you remember, you have your daily homework of each day you have to do. So you might do like 3% catch up work today. You might do another 3% tomorrow, because she likes math. So I talked in percentages. So 3% tomorrow and then another 3%. Are your teachers writing your ass? And she's like, no, they're not. I said, so if they're not writing your rear end, then why are you doing this to yourself? And let's go kinder and gentler with ourselves. So I gave her lots of, I said, am I remembering correctly that you had COVID? She's like, yeah, and she blushed, and she chuckles, and I'm like, okay, so your teachers are being flexible. I need you to learn to be flexible with yourself. So we just really need to do that. I think the academic learning will catch up when the emotional learning kind of parallels it. And I think it's very important with our children, because this is a new landscape they're in right now. And I think it's a beautiful chance for us right now to be able to think about, what can I do where I take time right now to coach my child on how to be a friend? Did you know that they don't come in with an inbuilt instruction manual about how to be a friend? That it's our job to teach them how to be friends. They don't know how to be friends. It's our job as parents to coach them on how to develop friendships, how to have conversations, how to be a good listener to others, how to do thoughtful things for people. Because I know the people who are my friends, they listen to me going on and on and on. The people who are my friends remember my birthday, like first thing in the morning, they remember my birthday. They do kind things for me. The people that are my friends will just randomly get me a bouquet of flowers or something like that, right? So they do random acts of kindness. So those are the things we can teach our children right now in terms of as you never, because middle school especially, I mean, my poor things, they're going through all these hormonal changes. They're getting zits on their face. Half of them have braces going on. They're feeling ugly as anything, and they're feeling unwanted, and they feel middle school is a time that's the most distressful time for any child. I have adults, when I do presentations, I have adults that are in their 50s who talk about how middle school years were their worst years. So we want to be kind to our children, and we want to teach them to have some kindness. So there was a question in the chat box that is, what if your kid refuses to go on a walk with you? I say expect refusal for at least 6 months. We're in the long game here, guys. You don't just try once and go, oh, my feelings are hurt. He doesn't want to go for a walk with me. No. Just say, oh, baby, I'm so lonely. I'll go for, and you go for your walk. You go, lovely, I'm so lonely. I would love to have some company on my walk. Just walk with me, like maybe walk 1 block and then you can come back home. And that 1 block that he walks with you, you be quiet. You don't have to start a conversation. You don't need to talk about any of the things we've talked about here today. Just be in silence with your child, because that's like one of the best gifts we give our children. Just give them the gift of your company, your love, the gift of your silent, strong strength, because you as a parent bring a lot of strength to your children. That's why we have children, because we want to raise good human beings, right? I'm enjoying this. I don't know if you guys are enjoying this. Is anybody enjoying it? Yeah? Yeah, we had a few dropouts. That's okay. It's understandable because we had to go to other things. So what I want to do is really kind of take some time and remind everybody that Rome was not built in a day. Okay? What I have done today in our gathering today is I have planted some seeds in your minds, right? I've planted some seeds because we truly are in a beautiful time. We're in a gorgeous time in our life. And I've planted some seeds for you to kind of contemplate on ways in which you want to do things differently in the future. What is our post-pandemic family going to be comprised of? What is our post-pandemic family going to treasure? What is our post-pandemic family? Because we're still in the pandemic, so we can start like kind of thinking about what that's going to do. Thank you, Julio. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Raki. Yeah, I think and as parents, what I always tell my parents is remember how when we go on a plane, they always tell us, put on your oxygen mask first, okay? There's a reason. And we parents we have to be kind of like the lighthouse for our children right now, right? We have to be the lighthouse. So the lighthouse is steady and it's firm, and the storms rage around the lighthouse, but the light is steady. The building is strong, so we're the lighthouse. If we can, when things are going on, and there's so much shit going on in our world, okay? So when things are going on and you get all agitated, a rule you might want to create for yourself might be that you don't watch any news after 12 noon. So nothing comes your way that agitates you in any way. You don't turn on any news stations at all in the evening. None of the cable shows, left or right leaning, none of the cable shows come on. You just calm that thing down to where it's your family and your family only, with whatever's going on for your kids, and how do we want to navigate this evening today, and what's on our plate for tomorrow, and how do we live much more in the present right now. So a big inspiration for me is Priya Parker. Her stuff is so good. And in fact, she wrote her book before the pandemic came about. But there's just a whole lot she's doing. And she's a good person, even for our workplaces, because what I'm finding is that the children are okay with going to where they want to go. But what's going on with the adults is the adults are having a much harder time adjusting to the changes that we have and things like that. Glad. I'm glad, Shumin. I'm glad, Prab. I'm glad you're learning a lot. I just think one simple thing about taking that walk with your child, son or daughter. I mean, I don't want to be sexist in any way here and make it all about your son, but I just had joy with my son, but I tend to have a lot of joy with my daughter, period. So to me, that piece, and I know because teenage boys in particular are extra sensitive, their feelings get hurt, and we could be talking in like a normal voice, but I kid you not, your teenage son will think, whether he's a 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, or 12th grader, he'll think you're yelling at them. So when you go on a walk and you're quiet, and the reason why they think we're yelling at them is because of the amount of heightened testosterone they have in the brain, that makes them really, really sensitive. So they're very sensitive to the tone of our voices. They're sensitive to how we speak to them. So that's the reason why I find myself just going down a notch or two. I used to find myself, because he's like, Mom, why are you yelling at me? I go, baby, I'm not yelling, but I know he heard yelling from me, and I'm going to believe it. I'm not going to devalue what he's hearing on his end, because that's what he's sharing. So I need to like tone it down a little bit. And we want to teach them kindness. I remember one of the things that my son, even my daughter knows, that if I walk in the house and and you come into the garage door and we enter our kitchen, that if that area of the room is like very nice and tidy and there's no dishes in the sink or anything, Mom's going to be in a very happy mood this evening. So they just knew the 2 or 3 things that they would do out of kindness for me, because of the kindness I give them ad nauseum in my way of being with my children. So when we are kind with them, we're raising kind, mindful children. And our job as parents feels very gratifying when we raise these human beings that are very very well respected in the world, and their friends like them, and their teachers will say, gosh, your son is so polite. So going back to that golden rule. And I think, Michelle, this may be a time I can start to sort of wrap up a little bit if there's anything. Yeah, but really, I think the biggest thing I'm going to emphasize is, what are the ways in which you bring about that golden rule in your family? How are you going to teach your children how to be a good friend? Because in order to have good friends, they have to be a good friend to somebody else, right? They will not have good friends if they're not being a good friend. So, and what is a good friend? What is a good friend comprised of? And to me, sometimes much of it kind of falls back on a simple golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat others with kindness, treat others with empathy, treat others with respect. Because what we've found is, with iPhones coming in as much as they have come in, respect has gone out the window. You're like, I'm not having this. I don't like this. I want kindness. I respect you when you're speaking. If you need something, I respect you by doing that for you. I would like respect back in return. And we can, evaluate those standards we've created in our family and kind of go back to the drawing board for ourselves and say, what is the value-laden life we want to have for ourselves? And what have I just unconsciously put back on the plate that I didn't even think twice about it, and say, do I really want that back on the plate? Or do I not want that back on this current plate that we're building right now? And those high school years fly by so fast. And the middle school years are very emotionally turbulent. But if you become turbulent with your child, then they're going to not be feeling soothed by you. So you have to remain that lighthouse, that remains steady. That's why your walks with your girlfriends matter. Your sleep matters. Your good nutrition matters. For guys, you going to your gym to get that steam off of you so that you come home and you're in a calmer place. And guys, for your nights out you have with your guys, we have to be able to put our oxygen mask on, take care of ourselves, be kind and gentle with ourselves so that we can be kind and gentle with our teens as we go into this exciting phase. I think it's a very exciting phase, what we could do here, by the way.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kakaiya. I can't speak for everyone else, but I have a long list of simple tips, but yet I know they're going to challenge me. So, and I will also add that a number of people who did fill out the questionnaire yesterday or the day before did indicate some interest in a follow-up parent support group. You know, as you mentioned, it would be great if we could have more mindful gatherings, even if we're forced to do that online like we are right now. So to those people who did sign up, stay tuned. I will follow up with an email, and I'm sure that we will then announce anything to all of the schools. So those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, who maybe didn't see the questionnaire or didn't sign up at first, but now might be interested in signing up, just watch. I'm sure there will be some sort of an announcement. So thank you again, everybody, and thank you so much, Dr. Kakaiya.
You're so welcome. And we have to do this communally. You know, we're a community. We're a village. And these are 3 schools, and you guys are a village with each other. So I think the fact that all of you are sort of even contemplating, and those of us that have already jumped into a very busy life, rethink that and decide that, hey, for the next 4 to 6 years, do I want to slow things down a little bit so I get to experience my child in the way in which I want to experience them? That there's going to be time to be able to do that. So I think that thought that you all have had about possibly having a gathering where our purpose is, are we living, maybe a theme each week, each time you gather can be, are we feeling like we're living that valued life that were thinking we wanted to have as we were in the height of the pandemic? And what were some of the joys that we really enjoyed that we're missing right now? Those could be, Michelle, those could be 2 prompts with which you could start every meeting, and there'll be a sweet discussion that'll happen. I promise you that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Is there anybody that was hanging on because they wanted to ask a question yet?
I think people are thinking. I think I'm making everybody like digest stuff, you know? Right? There's a question. You're welcome. You're welcome. There's suggestions that come from my heart. I mean, they are, as you know, because families matter to me. I'm a shrink. I want families to be looking healthy. Good. Beautiful.